the AI-dominated market, the emergence of artificial intelligence is forcing a rapid evolution in marketing and commerce. We're going to continue this. Philip has entered the green room. I'm going to push the button, and we're going to begin with Philip Berry. Thank you for being here on Global TV Talk Show.
Hi, Ed. Give me a second.
Yeah,
Morning.
Philip.
Morning.
Hello and welcome.
Yeah, give me a second. Give me a second.
Yeah, I've got to plug in here.
Yeah, give you a second.
All right, here I am. I'm plugging in. You're on live TV right now. I was just getting done with a brief intro to you and the topic of rebranding. And I looked at AI and I was just reading about some of their stuff, but it sounded just like Philip Berry talking
Mhm.
in terms of their words. One of the things is business risks are surrounding us now. This involves meeting challenges by repurposing and redefining old views, mitigating internal risks. Rebranding is necessary to counter specific internal business risks identified in the workplace, such as high rates of incivility, disrespect, and social exclusion. I'm not going to go on with that. But
Yeah. There's a simpler way to look at it, but and I have.
well, we're going to be joined by a few others, and
hmm
as I understand it, you need around 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we'll have a short discussion, and then um, Joseph McGuire from Dublin is going to come on and give us some insight into negotiation tips. Uh,
Okay.
maybe it's a timely thing with the current events in the Middle East.
No. Yeah. Well, we'll see how.
Right.
I'm staying away from the Middle East.
Yeah.
'Cause, I have very specific views about this whole thing. And but anyway, well, we'll see.
So you're wearing your super glasses, and
Yes.
what are you seeing now besides me?
Well, I can see anything I want. Yeah, because I mean, I can. I mean, I have nearsightedness, foresightedness. I mean, the sun. Yeah, it's like it operates like regular glasses, you know.
Yeah.
But however, if I wanted to take a picture of something, or if I wanted to do some AI research by asking this device, which I'm not going to say what it is because that would be conjuring it up, you know. But I could ask questions and it would give me answers through artificial intelligence, and which only I can hear. Or I could play music.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So do you just blink and you get choices?
No, no, no. I ask a question. And like I say, I have to conjure it up by asking a question. And then it gives me and also I could speak to it in different languages. Or let me put that no, no. I can be in a conversation with some people who speak French or Spanish because I also have that language facility. And what would happen is that it would translate the conversation that their their conversation that's in Spanish or in French into my ears, and then I could respond back. So
Wow, interesting.
those
Um,
are a few of the things, and yeah,
so it's June 12th, and you have a business trip coming up soon. I
yes.
appreciate your busy schedule and your time here today and continuing this important series on Global TV Talk Show. So I look forward to working on getting the program ready for distribution and streaming later today, and of course beyond that. A lot of people are interested in this. I've worked to get others to join us as commentators. Um, invited Dr. Ken Lloyd, and he was all set to show up, and they had a pipe burst
Wow.
suddenly. So that's I call that breaking news. So I'm not sure he's going to be able to come. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening in the marketplace. SpaceX is going public today, and a lot of people are super interested in that. Uh, that guy, Elon Musk, is rebranding himself constantly here, and he's just ratcheting up, and of course, taking advantage of situations. What do you think of all that?
Well, I mean, there are a number of people who are doing that. He's one, but he's more visible because of the media giving him attention. But it's a matter of whether or not the products really make sense. So, and I think that people need to, within the context of that, they need to think about their own career and where they're going, and how instead of either worrying or thinking about a person who is on his way to being a trillionaire, or what do I do in my job today? Yeah, and what do I do differently today, and how do I go about it? And so I think that that's what people need to be more focused on, because that's going to make the difference in their life, not whether or not I can go to Mars.
So it's personal identity.
Well, I mean, I think it all comes down to the fact that we all have a specific job, and we have a specific task and activities, and that's why this notion of rebranding is extremely important, because others will give attention to this task of rebranding, and that will dominate the airwaves. But what people need to do is to think about, well, what am I going to be doing within the midst of all of that? How do I take advantage of this situation, the timing, in order to reclaim what my job and is going to be, and how I'm going to proceed to keep my career moving?
So where would you like to begin?
Well, I mean, I do have a number of slides that I'd like to go into, and I can begin there, and therefore keep to the time frame that you've given me.
Yeah, let's go forward.
I need to let's see. Uh,
Okay, I see your slides.
um, let me see. Okay. So to me, this should I begin with this and go through it,
Yes,
the
here is
presentation with
Philip
this?
Perry to
Okay.
talk about rebranding. And doing a live show creates opportunities for um, a situation like we're talking about this second, just getting ready, but it's okay. The audience is tuning in because they know, like, and trust what I've been doing, and they know, like, and trust and honor you from all your experience. We're going to be joined right now from Brazil, Jana, and I'll introduce you first. Um,
Okay.
she's a young woman, super bright, and entrepreneur who's just launching a new business. And I'll ask Jana to introduce herself when she arrives in studio here. Uh, I push the button to let her in. Hello, Jana. Join us. Okay, I hear a bell.
Her vocals is not on.
I don't know why she's not visible here. Okay, what is happening? Invite host tools. Uh, okay, Jana, please unmute and enter the room when you're ready. Thank you very much. Uh, we'll introduce you to Phil Berry, and we're going to begin. Okay, Phil, Philip Berry Associates, and hello, Jana, welcome. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Hello.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Nice to meet you, Philip.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Fabulous. How is everything, Edwin?
Yeah, really good. We are beginning right now live, and Philip is just about to launch his presentation about why rebranding now. And you are a perfect example of your new company and about your new brand. So I invite you to ask Philip questions, and this is an interactive mastermind session, and your voice and your experience about what you're doing right now with RISO and with your partnerships with others about total care, taking total care of the employee being transferred and the family. That is a terrific rebranding effort, Jana.
Thanks. Really looking forward to it.
Great. Okay,
Uh,
Philip,
yeah,
why are
that's
we
great.
here?
That's great. And I think as we go through, it really presents, Jenna, the rationale that should be at the forefront of our mind because we are in this age of AI. And so what's important about that is that we think about how we rebrand ourselves within this age of AI and within all of the all of the news that has taken place. The news really focuses and puts so much emphasis on what people maybe are losing and challenges that are in front of people. But what we need to do is to, as an executive coach, my job is to also help people to identify what they can do differently. You know, what is this whole notion of rebranding and why do we need to do it? And then I want to talk about how you do it. And so, and that's the emphasis that I want to lay out as I go through. I'm going to come up with a strategic framework that individuals will be able to walk away from this session with. So that way they will know what they need to do next, as opposed to just sitting down worrying about what others are doing or not doing. And so when I think about it in that way, fundamentally, when I talk to a number of people in my coaching work, everybody wants to make some type of a difference in the work they're doing, and also with their teams and also with their business. Businesses are in a quandary right now because they're trying to determine what they need to do differently from what's in place now and how can they make a contribution to that difference that keeps them in the situation where they're still in the picture, you know, as opposed to worrying about, well, this my business is changing, my work is changing, but my company is trying to get rid of me in the process. Well, I think that people can take control of the situation more. And that's why rebranding is important. And so when I think about that, as I go through this, I think about the fact that what maybe worked for us before, people are relying very much on the degree that they received, maybe the jobs that they had before, and their old competencies that strengthen their capability to move forward, their skills. But that is not necessarily going to be a guarantee for us in the future. And that's why rebranding is important. The old story is not going to work anymore. And in fact, and within my consulting practice, I have individuals who are or doctors or who are lawyers or engineers. And in fact, I have all three of those in my portfolio. And it's been interesting because these individuals have put a lot of time and effort into their profession, and they said they thought that that was going to be the wherewithal, that was going to be the given that would determine exactly what their job would be and how they would function within that framework. And so they're faced with the uncertainty that the environment is posing to us by AI, which is throwing that upside down, which is causing us to look at the whole scenarios in a very different way. And that's why I talk about rebranding, because the branding is who we maybe who we were. Well, but then what we need to talk about is who are we becoming, and how can we ensure that we have a strategic framework that determines our new why and gives us greater purpose and also greater intention, so that way we could be more productive, more effective, and within the framework of the world that we happen to be operating in. And when you think about rebranding, what it means, quite frankly, is that looking at the competencies, the skills, and the values that individuals bring to a situation. And so we need to relook at the three things in a different way. And it causes us to question the identity that we have and that we form, because all of those, the knowledge that I have from my job experiences and from the schooling that I went to, all of that formulated what my brand was. Well, that's not going to continue to help us in the future. So we need to look at the misalignment there, and it causes us to also look at the fact that there's a different audience, the customers, the people who are buying our products, who cater to us. There's a disconnect between what the way we might have performed with them before and what needs to happen in the future. There's a cultural shift, there are generational shifts that are taking place. And also the market itself is changing. And whether you're operating, whatever country you happen to be operating in, a country used to determine the boundaries of your existence and how you did your work. Well, that's being challenged because people are moving from one country to another. And their attitudes towards, and also their desires, what they want in the marketplace is changing, because the consumer is influenced by a number of factors that they weren't influenced by before. And I know this especially from my work as an executive at Procter and Gamble, and also at Colgate-Palmolive, where I worked globally in different countries and looking at how those countries, the framework and the boundaries that existed to define how a country, how you would market and who the consumer would be, it's all different now. And so therefore we're at an inflection point, what I call a defining inflection point, to look at things in a little differently. And what matters in this whole framework, this is why rebranding really matters, because one has to say, am I still relevant? The way that I operated before, the way I positioned myself, the way I marketed, what I produced before, it doesn't, it fails to adapt. If it doesn't adapt, then what happens is that the relevance becomes your relevance becomes outdated because people are looking for something different than they were before from the standpoint of what you are producing. And additionally, your competition is different. Who you're competing with, is extremely different now because it's a much more crowded landscape that is signaling a different way for you to perform and a different way for you to act and react. And therefore trust and credibility becomes very critical in this whole framework where you have to develop a new vision and you have to be able to get stakeholders involved in a different way than they were before. And so therefore, when people look at rebranding, you say, well, what's the why? Well, the why is that we want to be perceived differently than we were before. Whatever product that we had, whatever way we were operating within the company. For example, if I happen to be a lawyer, I will be viewed as irrelevant if I don't understand a lot more about the technology, or about the products that I'm working, about the commercial enterprises. And so there's an expansion. I find that I'm looking and talking with people about expanding their role in a way that's different from before. And therefore we rebrand when we want to be perceived differently. And also when we want to expand to a whole different marketplace. In fact, I'm working with an individual who is in a country domestically very strong. However, what he wants to do is that he wants to differentiate himself so that way he is viewed not just as a lawyer, but as an entrepreneur on a global basis. He wants to, and matter of fact, we're having some success with that because we're beginning to look at his whole outlook in a different way and getting different people to look at him and his business that didn't look at him before. And that's the challenge that we have. And a number of other people, when they're working in a business because of changes that are taking place externally, they find that there are new consumers that they have. And when we look at all this, in fact, when I think about branding, the whole purpose the whole person is different. So there are a set of perceptions that help an individual to formulate who they are, and also is how other people see them. The whole brand is not just how you see yourself, it's how others see you and how they're able to put together their perception of you based on the new you that you might be trying to come up with and come up with a whole new story in terms of who you are and what you're going to do and what you're capable of doing. And that's why Charles Darwin, he had the answer because he said, well, it is not people who just feel that they're the strongest of the species, nor the most intelligent, but it is those who are most responsive to change. And so that's why when we talk about change, my whole position in terms of rebranding is how can you change so that way you can be more adaptable and more relevant to people or to new jobs that you might want to go into, new companies that you might want to go into, even the company that you happen to be in. How can you, if you had a domestic career and you decided that you're going to relocate to a certain country, and then what happens after that? How do you begin to position yourself as a person who is knowledgeable about different companies, different countries, different consumers? That's what we need to look at. And the point of this is that this has really been done before. History, this is not new. Some people act as if this is a new thing that's happening. But in the 1440s, the printing press changed the way, and Gutenberg bringing about different ways that people can put knowledge together, and who would be the gatekeepers of that knowledge. That all resulted in a renaissance and reformation and, and democratizing ideas in a way that didn't exist before. Well, in the 1990s, this historically began to approach us again. In fact, I remember some of us, we think about the fact that, well, I can Google, we use language saying, well, I'm going to Google something. I mean, yeah, that's the way we would look at things as opposed to looking it up in Poor Richard's Almanac, which is what happened with the printing press. Well, people are now finding that they can't just say that I'm just going to Google something to get more information. What I have to do is I have to look at a whole different framework. And that's what happened with the Industrial Revolution. It brought about a whole different way of us thinking about this first, and then it began to take hold, especially with the issues of and ideas of new categories like e-commerce and the social economy, the gig economy, global connectivity. All of those are new things that we have to be concerned about now that we didn't have to be concerned about before. Well, that is what AI is doing to us. And so it concerns me when you have people say, well, I'm not going to think about AI. Well, you have to because that's the framework that you're operating in. Well, in fact, my first job when I came out of high school, I had a business high school degree, and my first job, I was working at IBM, and I was what you call a techie at that time. And so, therefore, I will put together different component parts of computers and sell it and position it to the customer. And now, and one of the things that I saw is that when I talk about change, every year there was a new generation of computers that came into existence. And it caused me to have to remodel the way I would approach the work and the way I would deal with people. And in fact, if I look at this small device here, which maybe you can see, maybe you can't, well, everything that I can do now, I used to do in a whole big room in terms of printing, processing information, sorting information out. And now I can do it within a framework of the park and get a new way of looking at life in a different way. And think about the rebranding, that uh, I want to get into some conversation, but let me talk to you about the rebranding that has worked pretty well in three different areas. I mean, for example, when we look at Apple Computer, and people were buying these new devices, all of a sudden, instead of me just making a phone call with this device that was in my hand, what I'm doing, I could watch a movie. I can listen to records. I can get data from a number of different sources. And not just through Apple, I can do it through Netflix and I can do it through Prime and a number of other places, all within my the reach of my hand. And so Apple changed the conversation. In fact, when Apple was really strong, I was working as the head HR person for Digital Equipment Corporation, which was another computer company that existed. And then eventually it got gobbled up and it was bought by Hewlett Packard. And so what you see happening is that the way people were looking at these little devices that they would just have in their hand, they were looking at it in a whole total room. And they would buy this every year. They didn't even know why they were buying it. But the relevance in the marketplace was that you got to have it. And so people wanted to get on with the move. The same thing would happen with Nike. Nike really started out as a company, a running company, and was what they did was they began to morph into something, not just a sneaker, but it was about lifestyle. It is about how I'm relating to the environment in a different way, how I'm increasing my potential. That was really what made my Nike strong and how I came into existence. And people used to watch TV and look at Oprah. And Oprah really changed the conversation from just looking at a talk show, but to becoming a platform, a multimedia platform where people could, she became a spiritual authority. People felt that they had to turn on to this so that way they could understand more about that. So the rebranding can help a company and also it can help individuals. And as I put this together, I say to myself, what is it that I need to do? What's the new story? Everyone on this should say, what's my new story? And how do I begin to rewrite my script? And the strategic rebranding, as I go into this, has us address this by looking at four different pillars. And these pillars start with understanding, well, what is my new why? Knowing why I exist in a company or in an organization, why my organization exists, and what can I do to help so that I can tell a different story more boldly? And how can I make sure that I'm listening to the right audience? Am I listening to just the audience that's out there with the competition? Or is there a new audience that can get new data, new information that helps me to define what that will be? That's one of the things that I really like about AI, is because it helps us to listen differently to the data and understand what's out there so that way we can position ourselves in a very more complex and more forthright manner. So what's the story that we have? And so that's why when we look at the strategic factors of a successful brand, it's really understanding how we are developing this new identity, really getting deep insights from the audience, whoever that audience might be, whoever that audience is supposed to be. So that way I begin to broaden my perspective and my contribution so that I'm more relevant than I was before. And that provides a whole different context from a cultural and from a competitive standpoint. And we have to ensure that we are communicating with people in a number of different ways, not just through one medium. In fact, one of the things that I'm looking at, even with my book, is a strategy around different mediums that I use to communicate. And I have to have, and I'm developing a multi-channel execution strategy, which I'll talk about in another program. But that's one of the things that we have to have. And we have to begin to ensure that there's an internal alignment with our brand that we have and with this circle of people that we want to communicate in a different way. And so this whole rebranding, as I move into the latter part of my piece here, and then we can have a little more conversation, is that you have to start first by assessing where you are now, identify market opportunities, define your unique self, your new self, and then craft a compelling story and ensure that you have consistency and visibility across every venue that you would work in. It can't just be a single dimension. It has to be multidimensional. And that's one of the things that I focus on. My last piece here that I focus on is how can I talk about the 8 steps that individuals can use that fortify some of the steps that I just talked about on a broader level. So that's what I wanted to state, and let's see how we might move forward from that.
Thank you, Philip. What are white spaces? Yeah, white space is a blank space or a possible meeting place for experimentation and application.
It's interesting when I think about since I've worked abroad and one of the things that sometimes Americans focus on, they focus a lot on what they're communicating to others. and how they are communicating it to others. However, they don't spend enough time listening to others. They don't spend enough time watching what people are doing and looking at the verbal and the nonverbal. That's the white spaces that individuals would have. So you could be in a meeting with some people, or you could be with a number of people or just with another person. And all of a sudden, the individual, you ask the question, and then there's silence there. And so we need to understand, what is the white space? What are people saying within that space that we aren't hearing? And how do we open up our eyes so that way we can, on a multicultural basis, from a multicultural basis, broaden our deeper understanding of what's going on and what are people really saying to us. I mean, I love that because, you go into any culture in Latin America and in Asia, you see that there are a number of cultural frameworks that operate in this white space, and they communicate a lot. I mean, everything that they have to say is said so loudly. But then, if we're not listening to that, then we're not going to move forward. And that's also what happens when people are buying your products or when they are trying to understand what has to happen there.
So I want to introduce Jana to you. Jana is in Rio. She's an entrepreneur and is just launching a new business, which I want to invite her to get into with you right now. But in just a minute, um, the company RISO, I want you to get into that and what does that mean to you? And talk about the total care approach that you're taking in people management, taking care of people who are going on assignment. Philip, her background involves recruitment, but also years ago involved with the United Nations. Philip has similar experience, Jana. That's why I'm bringing that up. Jana?
Thank you, Ed. Really appreciate it. I love everything that you brought, Philip. I love that you connect with the whole interculturality. It's a topic that it's really close to my heart. It's something that I'm daily working with. And yeah, so many things that you mentioned, I really endorse and I would love to reinforce. As Edwin said, I'm the founder of RISOGlobal, that it's like a boutique management company for professionals and individuals circulating around the globe. And when you talk um, rebranding, it really resonates with something that in different scenarios I call about figure out the best way of translating. Uh, Between if it is cultures or stakeholders or whoever, to your point, to whoever is your client, like, and your what you were saying about the blank spaces and listening, I think that it's key because I see so many, like, and I understand people are so excited to put all their words out there. They wanted to bring all the knowledge, experience, but they a lot of the times they lose so much opportunity and time because they want to talk so much and they miss the opportunity of listening what they lead their client, their prospect wants, and normally that it's much simpler than what they're trying to present. And for me it's kind of funny, because and I got it again, comes from like, oh, I have so much to say, but can be much easier by like, okay, how I can support your success, what you're looking for. And okay, understanding that sometimes the client, they don't, I always say that, maybe every day I say that sentence. They don't know what they don't know, for sure, but they end up by reaching out to you or talking with you because they think that they know what they want. And to start, you need to hear from where they are starting, right? So I love everything that you said. I think it really touches with the whole idea that that's a human being thing, like assuming that because something it's part of my routine, it's part of my conversations with the people that I'm working every day, that it's obvious for people outside of that bubble, right? And like, oh no, that's obvious, that's clear. And I always say, like, doesn't matter, like, especially when we are talking globally for fact, but there's no such a thing as a obvious thing to anyone. So listening to where is the pain, what is expected, I think it's um, uh, so on point to what you said. And something else that you mentioned that really connects with something that here at RISO, it's one of our focus. The reason why we deliver people-centric, real people-centric approach with the possibility of tailoring solutions is because we understand that one size does not fit all. And I think that really mirrors what you mentioned about rebranding. It's not like starting from zero. It's just guaranteeing that you are adapting the message to what is the specific need on what is in the other side. So just touching points because yeah, I really appreciate it. I really like the way that you presented. I love that you brought the whole historic part. I think that's always super valuable to explain the journey. It's not something and to make people connect with, like, oh, it's not something that we are just creating now. It's like
Mhm.
there's a whole journey, and history proves the effect, and that things, because it's always a circle, right? In history, things, they just tend to repeat in different dimensions, but the history always reframes, and I love that you connected with the historical part. So really appreciate your time.
Philip.
Jen, I tell you, I really, there are a few things that you have said which are just incredibly important. And when you look at it from the standpoint of relocation, the fact that you have a business that is looking at this from a global standpoint as a starting point, I mean, that's so rich because in working with a number of relocation people in the early days, they they would really just focus on, well, how do I get a person just moved? It was almost one dimensional. How do I just get a person moved to this particular location? And they don't think about, well, what happens after that? I mean, their story should also be something that connects with the broader picture that is going to be developed because a person has worked in this country that you've placed them in. And I think that's the type of thing that you're focusing on with your business.
Well, the people aspect, it's just not of moving a body or moving furniture
Yeah.
or job function, but people are separated from their life as it was, and they don't know what it's going to be, and they don't have any friends, and they don't have any valves, escape valves for getting perspective, and that's what she's focusing in on. Janet, go deeper.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And science proves, like, that when an individual moves from a hometown or whatever, a place that they've been for a long time, and goes it, the individual literally loses everything that gives base and security and confidence. So it's one thing to be, to your example, Philip, to be a lawyer in your hometown that you've been working and living there for like decades. People know you since you're young. They saw your whole trajectory. It's like it makes it easier. They just know who you are, and connections are easier, everything it is. And then you achieve a point of your life where you have like a lot of recognition, certifications, and you are like in this incredible place in your career, and then you are exposed to show that up as a win, of course, but then you go to a place that nobody knows you, and those certifications, they are just like, okay, but who are you? And then from one side, you have so much to prove your capacity, but from the other side, you don't have any of the basis that can make you feel like assured that you can achieve things. So it's it's really interesting because I have and you mentioned that you had experience moving abroad, and I think it's something that it's really hard for people who never experienced to really understand how deep that can be. And it's not even like that. And that is another thing. It's not that like, oh, I have a solution, I have a machine, or I have a medication that will take that away, because the challenge of adapting will happen, doesn't matter. But knowing that there is a journey, that it's a process that happens to everyone, really makes it easier. I like to always compare that with getting a having a pain and not knowing what is the diagnosis. It's like if I have a headache and I go to a doctor and they are like, oh, we are researching, we don't know, and there is like the not knowing, or worse, like, oh, I have a big pain and I don't know where to go. I just feel this pain and I don't know what it's what. I don't know what to take. I don't know where to go. Nature for humans, we will just think about the worst. We will take our focus on the things that are on our daily routine. We will just lose focus on everything else because we are so concerned about this unknown pain. From the other side, if I had a diagnosis that, even if it isn't like a simple thing, but I know what is the doctor I need to go, I know the medication that I'll have to take, I know how long I will take the medication, and there's a process to go through that pain, it's totally different. It's like, oh, I'm facing this, but I know exactly the process, and I know that I have professionals taking care of me. And I think that is the journey when you're experienced. It's like, it's not that you will be out of the medication or the treatment, but being confident that I know that I'm being well taken care for people that know about this. So I know it's gonna pass and I have everything that I need. So I can focus in the other things that nobody can take care for you. And that really makes it the whole adaptation process much easier. And to Ed's point, uh, it's still, and I think it's like the professionals in our industry are responsible for it, because I feel that some of the topics we try to make it so accessible that we took away the deepness, the science, the scientific, the data behind, to make it easier for people to understand in a way that make it them don't see on how serious and it is. And I always say, like, people will never question like the importance of having like a immigration support, a moving support, taxation. And of course it is important. I will never say that it isn't, like, to guarantee that you have all the legal aspects ongoing. But if a document is missing, if a payment isn't done correctly, there are always like a fee, a moment of adjustment, something that you can fix in the process. And not to mention, it's a small process. Once it's approved, it's done. There are no fees, adjustments, ways of fixing when a relocation impacts and ends up being like on a burnout, on a divorce, on a shortener of the experience. Those like are things that you cannot pay a fee to fix it. You're impacting individuals' life, career, families in a really intense and important way. So it, the biggest asset is the human, that it's being exposed to that, because it comes with really long term and deep impacts. And to connect with what you were saying, like there's no such a case that is the same as the other, because every individual, every family has so many different layers. So it's really important to guarantee that we are adjusting, adapting the language, the branding, to guarantee that we are making ourselves really be a solution to our clients, right? I always tell people when they're starting, they will remember you in a way or another. So be sure that they will remember you because you support them during one of the most challenged time in their career, not someone that make their life more miserable and 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 difficult.
Wow. What you're saying is so rich. Can I ask you a question? How is your firm? Because there, what you were talking about really sparked a number of things in me, and which have made my life richer in terms of how I view myself and how my family views themselves. But what is it that your organization that you just started, how are you different than others that you compete with? I mean, tell me tell me a little bit about your brand. What
I
makes
love
you
that question. I love that question. And the answer, it's exactly the one reason, because some people come and ask me like, why only now? I'm being in the industry for almost 20 years. And a lot of people are like, why now? Do you regret not starting earlier? And the answer is no, because for so long, I tried to convince so many people in like buyers, suppliers, in every direction, convince about the value on genuinely put people at the center, because nobody will say that they don't care about people when they are talking mobility. Everybody knows the right wording, like, oh, I will say that I care for people. I will say that inclusion is important. They will never miss that. But it's pretty easy as well for you to get to the second page and see that in reality, the majority, it's not doing that, and they will have like a big list of excuses for not. And I understand it's not for everyone. So the differentiator here at Riso, it's one, we understand we are not for everyone. We are for companies and individuals that genuinely care. We do not want to be for big numbers. We are not here to uh, give like fixed small boxes that will fit for everyone. We really want to listen to our clients, understand what is their specific need, and tailor a really specific solution with people that have the innovative vision to do not fit on that, oh, this has always been the way that we have been doing. And it's because it's a really common, oh, this is how we've been doing for years. And to your point in the beginning of your presentation, what worked before will not work now. So the differentiator here is like we look at the individual, we understand their specific needs, and we will tailor a solution based on what it's in fact necessary. So pretty connecting with your presentation. We listen to the client, and then we deliver a solution based on their needs. And that was created based on my experience as a corporate, as a service provider, with my own relocation experience of seeing so many times individuals not even know what they have as option and have
yeah.
suffering so much and not been listening and receive benefits that they don't need and miss on things that were really relevant for their success. And so I was like, when I decided to start Hizo, I'm like, okay, what are the things that pretty few or maybe nobody's really paying attention to it? Oh, okay, Jana, but oh my God, that it's really few. I'm okay with. I don't want to convince anyone that what I do it's important, because the ones who really value, it's pretty easy, the understanding to your point, like, oh, that connects
Mhm.
me with so much that I have experienced. So I want to talk with those. I don't want to talk with the ones that are like, oh no, we have big package, we have lump sums, we have this big package that fits everybody, and they just have it all. And I got it. There are audience for that, but this is not our case here. I wanna people on a long term to always when they have a case, they have a VIP or they have like a really specific case that needs intentional attention, they will think like, oh, I'm sure Hazel will be the solution because they genuinely care about listening and understand what is the solution here.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
One of the things that I found, and this whole thing that you talk about in terms of empathy is so it's so important. And I went through a moving just a brief vignette on this. I went through a moving experience, and from one part of the U.S. to another. And what really made so I worked with two different moving companies. And one of them, interestingly enough, was a Japanese company, and I had to move some furniture. Like I had a big bookshelf, and what they did uh, because of the Japanese approach to situations, especially empathy, they decided how to use the concept of origami to take apart my bookshelf, and they drove it from New York to Florida. So and then they put it back together again. Origami is this
Wow.
concept, but you have
Yeah.
you break stuff up and then you put it together. I mean, that gave me such a rich feeling of them being really empathetic to my situation. And that empathy, and it cost me a little bit more. However, I was able to move that, and I felt that the care and treatment that they had in listening to me and how important it was, that was what made the difference for me.
So it's cultural.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's about people ask me like, oh, what is your superpower? Because you mentioned in
hmm
your presentation as well something about what is unique, right?
Yeah.
And and it's my superpower, but as well it's what I really need to watch out to don't slap me in the face back. I genuinely care.
Yeah.
So and that it's like that it's great and because and I think like always our superpower there's this really challenging line where it can really drives you to success, but if you don't balance and guarantee that you have all the tools around, that can really drive you to the wrong direction because you can lose the focus by trying to like I cannot solve all the solutions and save everybody, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I genuinely care. Um, about people. I respect dreams. I understand when people are relocating that involves personal family dreams.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's yeah.
You just said something which has added to my repertoire of coaching. And I want to tell you what it is, and I want to thank you in advance
Ah,
because it has to do with identifying your superpower. And I think of it a lot of times as when you're rebranding, what is your distinctive competence? What really makes you different than others? And it has to do with identifying what is your new superpower. People bring all type of, we're watching all of these movies now about people with superpowers, and this person can do this, see through walls, all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember the names of all the movies, but each of the characters in the movies, they all had a different type of a superpower that made them impactful with the story that they were addressing. Um, Thank you so much for that. To that word, that word and that concept is what's important for people to identify within the midst of everything that's going on. What is your superpower? Thank you.
And you're welcome. And I will add you a little bit on that. For years, that was a big challenge for me because not a question, of course, that I'm from humanities. And always when I will listen people talking about their potential, their superpower, they will always relate to a skill that in the majority will be with execs, numbers, and for me it was
Right,
like
right,
I'm
right.
good with people.
Yes, exactly.
But I back in the days I used to like undervalue that. I'm like, oh, what, I'm good at it. Yes, I'm good with people. Yeah, but for me it's like, oh my God, I need to have like I skill like on execs. And now funny story connecting with what you said about technology. What is the thing that artificial intelligence cannot do nowadays?
Yes,
They
what?
can do anything on execs. They can make any calculation, anything when it's execs. The one thing that artificial intelligence cannot do is be
Exactly.
genuinely care and
Mhm.
about people. So it's really interesting to see like, huh, I was so worried. Look at me like
I
now
think
like
that's
it's
so,
important.
yeah. I mean, it's so rich because that's what people have to bring differently, to that type of that one superpower in terms of you mentioned empathy, you mentioned listening skills. That's the root of what will help organizations and teams to improve if they have those type of superpowers. And working with leaders, the best leaders are not those who can just communicate and talk to people, is those who can listen. And by listening, you demonstrate an aspect of empathy that is important for people, that it makes people feel that you care about them, and so that's what you bring. Thank you for that.
Thank you. It was such really love the conversation. I would spend hours talking with you, Philip.
Definitely.
Jana, give us a timeline, not really a timeline, but a straight line appreciation of your early work at the United Nations, with the United Nations, and what you're doing right now.
Yes, that was, and it connects like because I'm an internationalist. I have a bachelor's degree in international relations, and when I started, I was, of course, like UN was like, oh my God, I wanna. This is the dream job. I wanna help people around the globe.
Mm,
And when I was um, writing my final paper, I choose to write about the challenges for the employability of refugee women here, single moms, refugee women, single moms
mhm,
here in Rio de Janeiro.
mm,
And every year at the United Nations, they have the CSW, that is the Commission of Women, that they get together to bring like things that need to be changed, share like things that are being achieved and all those things. And this group, this ONG, was recruiting people here in Brazil to represent Brazil. And I volunteered to support them on organizing this whole like, let's figure out who are we taking. And then for my really happy surprise, they're like, oh no, we wanted you to be representing. We read your paper and all those things. So it was really special. I had the opportunity to be one of the delegates. Was like a dream come true. I remember that was in New York, and I remember like years earlier, I was as a tourist and I visit UN as a tourist, and I remember going to the window that shows the audience going
yeah.
there internally, and I remember being like, "Oh my God, may one day I will be there," and like was really wow. the day that I entered that room and I was sitting at that table with the name of my country on top. And I remember looking at the window that one day I was there, and and I think like this is like, okay, this may sound massive, it's UN, like it's a global, but I think like it's it's more often than we can realize that we are living dreams that we had maybe when we are younger, or like, and all that. But that realization of like, wow, it's possible to uh, realize your dreams. But that connects with this whole thing about caring. When I choose the topic that I want to write about, it wasn't for everyone. Was like such a niche. Like, oh, why you're talking about those? Like, don't you want to amplify? No, 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 no. I know it's a problem. I know it needs to bring light to it. So I think like when you are intentional and you care about something, maybe can take longer, maybe, but just don't let anyone distract your vision, what you see
What did
as
you
you
say?
can deliver. So yeah, that was like a really
I need a
amazing
half hour.
experience. And nowadays, unfortunately, I'm not like super consistent on the CSW, but it's a topic, and always when I see young women, I support the dream of believing that it's possible, because it
Yeah, true.
is.
Got to keep the dream in front of us. That's for sure.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
So, Philip, did you live in Rio?
No, no, I lived in Paris,
Right.
outside of New
Yeah,
York. Yeah. I mean, I visited there, but I mean, I
yeah.
visited a number of different countries, but I like what Jenna is saying about this. So I think I have to go into another meeting that I'm supposed to
Me
be
too,
having right
gentlemen.
now.
Unfortunately, I need to jump. It was such a
Yeah.
pleasure and such a highlight of for a Friday. What a lovely conversation. Really appreciate that the invitation. Really appreciate you, Philip, for sharing your knowledge, your experience.
No, no, the same
Super
here. We
valuable.
need to connect on LinkedIn. I don't know if we're connected or
Absolutely.
not, but
I'm sending you now the invite.
okay, okay. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you both for participating and going deep. It makes this so rich, to use that word.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ed.
Wow.
yeah. Okay. I invite you guys to come back, of course, and
Yeah,
do
no,
more.
definitely, definitely.
Absolutely.
I could
I
talk to
see you
her
gentlemen
forever, you know.
around.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I welcome feedback out there, you in the audience. Send me an email, uh, editor, global business news at gmail.com. Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
See you
Take care,
all.
Take care.
Jenna.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.